The fluorescent lights in the courtroom felt too bright against my dark skin, making everything feel surreal and exposed. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands folded on the polished wood surface, wearing a royal blue blazer that my best friend Tessa had insisted made me look powerful. Across the aisle sat my husband Brandon and his mother Patricia, both looking at me like I was a stranger who had wronged them deeply. Judge Martha Rodriguez shuffled through papers on her bench, her reading glasses perched on her nose. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fear. My lawyer, Rebecca Wilson, sat beside me in a crisp green suit, her pen tapping a quiet rhythm against her notepad. "Mrs. Carter," Judge Rodriguez said, looking directly at me, "your husband and mother-in-law claim you verbally agreed to pay the mortgage on a property purchased for Mrs. Patricia Carter. They're suing you for $600,000. That's a substantial amount." My throat felt dry. $600,000. My entire savings. Money I had worked for since I was 16 years old, scrimping and saving every penny while Brandon spent freely. The judge turned to Brandon. "Mr. Carter, I have one question before we proceed further." She leaned forward slightly. "On the property deed for 428 Maple Grove Avenue, whose name appears as the primary owner?" Brandon shifted in his seat. His lawyer whispered something to him. The silence stretched too long. "Mr. Carter?" the judge prompted. "My mother's name," Brandon said finally. "And the secondary owner?" Another pause. Brandon's face reddened. "Mine, Your Honor." Judge Rodriguez removed her glasses. "Not your wife's name. Just yours and your mother's. Yet you claim she verbally agreed to pay the mortgage on a property she has no legal ownership of." I watched Brandon's confident expression crack just slightly. But this moment, this courtroom confrontation, this wasn't where my nightmare began. It started 3 months earlier, on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday evening. 3 months earlier, I arrived home from my job as a financial analyst at Parker & Associates around 6:30. The smell of takeout Chinese food filled our apartment. Brandon sat at our small dining table, still in his real estate agent polo shirt, a stack of papers in front of him. "Hey babe," he said, smiling that charming smile that had first attracted me 8 years ago. "Got your favorite Kung Pao chicken?" I dropped my purse on the counter, suspicious. Brandon rarely picked up dinner without being asked. "What's the occasion? Can't a husband surprise his wife?" He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit down. I want to talk to you about something." I sat, noticing the papers were legal documents. Mortgage papers specifically. Brandon slid them across the table. "You know how my mom has been struggling with rent, right? Her landlord keeps raising prices and she's on a fixed income." I knew this conversation. We'd had versions of it for years. Patricia constantly complained about money despite the fact that Brandon sent her cash regularly from our joint account. "I found her a beautiful house," Brandon continued, his enthusiasm building. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths in a quiet neighborhood. Perfect for her. "That's nice," I said carefully, opening the takeout container. "How much is she putting down?" "Well, that's the thing." Brandon leaned back, crossing his arms. "I helped her with the down payment. Used some of our savings from the joint account." My chopsticks froze halfway to my mouth. "How much?" $50,000. $50,000. Gone. Without discussion. "Brandon, that was money we'd been saving for." "For what?" "We've been married 7 years, Naomi. We don't have kids. What are we saving for?" His tone shifted, becoming harder. "My mother needs this. She raised me by herself. She sacrificed everything for me." I put down my chopsticks, my appetite vanishing. "So you bought your mother a house?" "Yes. And the mortgage payments are $3,200 a month." The number hung in the air between us. "You make good money, Naomi. You've been hoarding your personal savings account like some kind of dragon sitting on gold." He pushed the mortgage papers closer. "It's time to help family. That's what marriage means." "Help family by paying a mortgage on a house I don't own?" I picked up the papers, scanning them quickly. Sure enough, only Patricia's name and Brandon's name appeared on the deed. I'm not even on the title. "Because it's my mother's house." Brandon's jaw tightened. "You're being selfish right now. Do you know how that looks?" Selfish? The word stung. I've never touched my personal savings. That money is from before we were married, from my investments, from bonuses I earned. That's my security. Security from what? From me? Brandon stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "We're married. What's yours is mine and what's mine is yours." "Then why isn't my name on the house deed?" "Because you're being difficult about it." He grabbed his keys from the counter. You know what? Forget it. I'll figure it out myself. But don't come crying to me when my mother is homeless and it's your fault. He slammed the door on his way out. I sat alone at the table, the Kung Pao chicken getting cold, staring at mortgage papers for a house my husband had bought his mother without my input, using our joint savings and now expecting me to pay for with my personal money. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Brandon told me you refused to help. I raised that boy alone. I thought you were family. I deleted the text without responding. The next morning, Brandon acted like nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek before leaving for work, mentioned something about showings, and left me sitting at the breakfast counter with my coffee, wondering when my marriage had become a financial transaction. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. Patricia called daily. Naomi, honey, I just don't understand. You make such good money. This is just a small thing for you. Small. $3,200 a month for 30 years wasn't small. Brandon's approach alternated between guilt trips and cold silence. My mom is crying every night. She thinks you hate her. I don't hate her, I said tiredly. But I'm not paying for a house I have no ownership of. Then we'll add your name to the deed. After I start paying? No, Brandon. That's not how this works. His face darkened. You know what your problem is? You think you're better than everyone because you have money. You've forgotten where you came from. That hurt. I came from nothing. My parents died when I was 15, leaving me with nothing but debt. I put myself through community college, then state university, working 3 jobs. Every dollar in my savings account represented sacrifice, late nights, skipped meals, and determination. Brandon knew this. He'd been there for part of it. Or so I thought. I haven't forgotten anything, I said quietly. But I also won't be manipulated into paying for something that benefits everyone but me. Benefits everyone but you? Brandon laughed, but it wasn't a kind sound. You're unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. He grabbed his jacket and left again. That night, he didn't come home until after midnight. I pretended to be asleep when he finally slipped into bed, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. 2 weeks after the initial conversation, I came home to find Brandon and Patricia sitting in our living room. Patricia's eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Naomi, sit down, Brandon said, his tone formal. I remained standing. What's going on? Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I never thought I'd be treated this way by family. My own daughter-in-law refusing to help when I'm in need. Patricia, I've never refused to help you. But paying someone else's mortgage for 30 years isn't help, it's financial suicide. See? Brandon looked at his mother. See how she talks? Like we're trying to rob her. Aren't you? The question came out before I could stop it. Brandon stood up slowly. Get out. What? Get out. This is my mother. If you can't respect her, you can leave. I looked between them, seeing something I'd been blind to for years. This wasn't about helping family. This was about control. About access to my money. About reducing me to nothing more than a bank account with legs. Fine, I said. I'll stay with Tessa tonight. I packed a bag while they sat in the living room talking in low voices. As I left, I heard Patricia say, Don't worry, baby. We'll figure this out. At Tessa's apartment, I finally broke down. My best friend, still in her nurse's scrubs from the hospital, held me while I cried. He wants my money, I sobbed. That's all I am to him. Then we make sure he doesn't get it, Tessa said firmly. Tomorrow you call a lawyer. Tonight you rest. But rest didn't come. I lay awake on Tessa's couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying 7 years of marriage in my mind, looking for signs I'd missed. The way Brandon always knew exactly how much I had in savings. The way he'd discouraged me from making major purchases. The way he'd insisted we keep separate personal accounts while maintaining a joint account he had full access to. My phone buzzed at 2 in the morning. A text from Brandon, Mom is filing paperwork tomorrow. You verbally agreed to pay in front of witnesses. See you in court. That's when I knew. This wasn't a marriage. It was a long con. And I'd been the mark all along. But Brandon Carter had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. The scared 15-year-old orphan who'd had to learn to fight for everything was still inside me, and she was done being nice. I didn't go back to the apartment. For 3 days I stayed at Tessa's, going to work each morning in the same rotation of clothes I'd hastily packed. My boss noticed my distraction during an important client meeting, and I had to apologize, claiming a family emergency. It wasn't entirely a lie. Brandon called 17 times that first day. I didn't answer. His voicemail started apologetic, then turned angry, then threatening. Naomi, we need to talk like adults. Then, you can't just run away from your responsibilities. Finally, I'm warning you. My mother's lawyer is preparing documents. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. On day 4, I met with attorney Rebecca Wilson at her downtown office. Rebecca was in her mid-50s, with silver hair cut and a sharp bob and eyes that missed nothing. Tessa's cousin had recommended her, saying Rebecca specialized in cases where one spouse tried to financially manipulate the other. Rebecca's office was on the 15th floor, with windows overlooking the city. She sat across from me, a legal pad in front of her, listening without interruption as I explained everything. Let me make sure I understand, Rebecca said when I finished. Your husband purchased a property for his mother using funds from your joint account, without your knowledge or consent. Now he wants you to pay the mortgage using your separate personal savings, on a property where you have no ownership stake. Yes. And he's threatening legal action based on a verbal agreement he claims you made. I never agreed to anything. Rebecca made a note. Who are these witnesses he mentioned? I have no idea. I never discussed this with anyone except Brandon and Patricia. Naomi, I'm going to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest. Rebecca set down her pen and looked at me directly. Is there any chance your husband is having an affair? The question hit me like cold water. What? Why would you ask that? Because in my experience, when a spouse suddenly needs large amounts of money and becomes hostile when questioned, there's often a third party involved. Rebecca's expression softened. The perfume you mentioned, the late nights, the sudden financial pressure. These are patterns. I thought about Brandon's behavior over the past 6 months. The distance. The way he'd started spending more time at work. How he'd become protective of his phone, always keeping it face down, taking calls in another room. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe. We should find out. If there's another woman, and if community funds are being used to support her, that changes everything legally. Rebecca opened a drawer and pulled out a business card. This is Detective James Mitchell. He's a private investigator I've worked with before. He's discreet and thorough. I took the card, feeling the weight of what this meant. Hiring a private investigator felt like giving up on my marriage, like admitting something I wasn't ready to face. You don't have to decide right now, Rebecca said gently. But Naomi, protection of your assets is my primary concern. We need to move quickly. First thing Monday morning, I'm going to file for a temporary restraining order on your joint accounts. Brandon won't be able to withdraw anything without both signatures. Won't that make him angrier? Probably. But it will also prevent him from draining your accounts before we can sort this out. Rebecca stood, signaling the end of our meeting. Go home. If Brandon is there, stay calm. Don't engage with accusations. And document everything. Every text, every voicemail, every conversation. I left Rebecca's office feeling both stronger and more frightened. The elevator ride down felt endless. When I reached the parking garage, my hands shook so badly I could barely get my key in the car door. My phone rang. Not Brandon this time. Patricia. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello. Naomi. Patricia's voice was cold. I think it's time you and I had a conversation, woman to woman. What do you want, Patricia? I want you to stop being selfish and help your family. Brandon is my only child. Everything I did for him. And now he's married to someone who cares more about money than people. That's not fair. Fair? Patricia laughed. You want to talk about fair? I raised that boy in a one-bedroom apartment. I worked 2 jobs so he could have new shoes for school. I gave up everything. And now, when I finally need something, his own wife won't help. Patricia, Brandon used $50,000 of joint money without asking me. Now he wants me to pay a 30-year mortgage on a house I have no ownership of. How is that fair to me? Because that's what family does. Patricia's voice rose. But I guess you wouldn't know about that, would you? With your parents dead and no one to teach you what loyalty means. The words struck deep. I closed my eyes, breathing through the pain. Don't bring my parents into this. Then act like you were raised right. My lawyer already has 3 witnesses who will testify that you agreed to pay. We're filing papers Monday morning. You can make this easy or you can make it hard. But either way, you're going to fulfill your obligation. I have no obligation to you. See you in court, Naomi. Patricia hung up. I sat in my car shaking. 3 witnesses? Who could possibly testify to an agreement I'd never made? When I finally drove back to Tessa's apartment, she took one look at my face and pulled me inside. What happened? I told her everything. About Rebecca, about Patricia's call, about the supposed witnesses. They're bluffing, Tessa said firmly. They have to be. But what if they're not? What if Brandon has been planning this for longer than I thought? Tessa grabbed her laptop. Then we figure out what he's been doing. Do you have access to your joint account online? I did. I logged in while Tessa looked over my shoulder. The transaction history told a story I hadn't been paying attention to. Regular transfers to Patricia, yes, but also cash withdrawals. Large ones. $2,000 here, $3,000 there, always on Fridays. That's a lot of cash, Tessa murmured. What's he doing with it? I scrolled further back looking for patterns. 6 months ago the withdrawal started. Before that, Brandon's spending had been normal. Then suddenly everything changed. Look at this. I pointed to a charge. Riverside Inn. That's the expensive hotel downtown. Tessa clicked on the transaction. He charged $450 to a hotel 15 minutes from your apartment. Naomi, nobody books a hotel that close to home unless they're meeting someone. The realization settled over me like ice. He's having an affair. And spending your joint money on her. Tessa sat back. That son of a... My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Are you coming home tonight or are you planning to abandon our marriage completely? I stared at the message, anger replacing the hurt. He was having an affair, stealing from our joint account, pressuring me to pay his mother's mortgage, and somehow making me feel like the bad person. I typed back, I'll be home tomorrow to get more of my things. His response came immediately, good. We need to talk. Bring your checkbook. I showed Tessa the message. She snorted. The audacity. Are you seriously going back there? I need my documents. My birth certificate, my investment papers, everything important. I made a decision. And I'm hiring that private investigator. Rebecca was right. I need to know exactly what Brandon's been doing. I'm coming with you tomorrow, Tessa said. You're not facing him alone. That night I called Detective James Mitchell. He answered on the third ring, his voice professional but warm. Miss Carter, Rebecca Wilson mentioned you might call. Why don't you tell me what's going on? I explained everything. Again. The house, the money, the affair I suspected but couldn't prove. I can help with that, Detective Mitchell said. I'll need photos of your husband, his work address, any information you have about his schedule. I'll follow him for a week, document everything. My rate is $150 an hour plus expenses. It was expensive but necessary. When can you start? Tomorrow morning. Send me the information tonight and I'll be on him first thing. After hanging up, I sent Detective Mitchell everything I had. Photos of Brandon from our wedding, his work address, his usual schedule. It felt like a betrayal but also like survival. Tessa made tea and we sat on her couch, the TV playing quietly in the background. Can I ask you something? Tessa said. When did you last feel happy with Brandon? Really happy? I thought about it. The truth was painful. I don't remember. Maybe the first year? Before he really knew how much money I had saved. That's sad, Naomi. You deserve better than someone who sees you as a bank account. I thought he loved me. Maybe he did at first. But people change. Or sometimes they show you who they really were all along and we just weren't looking close enough. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay on Tessa's couch, staring at shadows on the ceiling, wondering how I'd gotten here. 7 years of marriage and I felt like I'd been sleeping next to a stranger. The next morning, Saturday, Tessa and I drove to my apartment. My apartment. That's how I'd started thinking of it. Not ours. Why? Because Brandon had turned our partnership into something transactional. His car was in the parking lot. I took a deep breath before using my key. Brandon sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, looking like he hadn't slept much either. But instead of concern or love, his expression held calculation. Finally decided to come home, he said. I'm here to get my documents. I moved past him toward the bedroom. He followed. Naomi, this is ridiculous. We're married. We should be able to work this out. Work what out, Brandon? You used our joint money without permission. You want me to pay for a house I don't own. What exactly are we working out? My mother needs help. Is that so hard to understand? I opened the closet, pulling out the fireproof box where I kept important papers. Your mother has money. I've seen her bank statements when she's left them lying around. She could pay her own mortgage. That's her retirement fund. She can't touch that. But I'm supposed to drain my savings? I turned to face him. Why, Brandon? Why is my financial security worth less than hers? Because you're young. You can rebuild. And so can she. Brandon's face reddened. You're being selfish. And you're being a liar. The words came out before I could stop them. Excuse me? Where were you on the nights you didn't come home? Who's the perfume for? What are you spending cash on every Friday? Brandon's expression changed. Not guilt. Anger at being caught. You're spying on me now? I'm looking at our joint account, which I have every right to do. Get out. Brandon's voice went low and dangerous. I'm getting out. I'm taking my documents and I'm leaving. I grabbed the fireproof box along with a few more items of clothing. Tessa appeared in the doorway. Ready to go? Brandon looked between us. So you're turning my wife against me now, Tessa? Nobody had to turn Naomi against you, Tessa said calmly. You did that yourself. We left. In the car, my hands shook so badly I had to rest them on my lap. You did good, Tessa said. You stood up for yourself. But it didn't feel good. It felt like everything I'd built was crumbling, and I was helpless to stop it. My phone rang. Rebecca Wilson. Naomi, we have a problem. Brandon's lawyer just contacted me. They're filing a lawsuit Monday morning. The amount is $600,000. My entire savings. They wanted everything. Can they do that? They can file. Whether they'll win is another story. But Naomi, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. I stared out the window as Tessa drove, watching my city pass by, and wondered if I'd ever feel safe again. Monday morning arrived too quickly. I sat at my desk at Parker & Associates, trying to focus on a client's investment portfolio, but the numbers blurred together. My phone sat face up beside my computer, waiting for the inevitable. At 10:47 a.m. it came. An email from Rebecca Wilson with the subject line, "Lawsuit filed." I opened the attachment with trembling hands. The document was 23 pages long. Carter and Carter versus Naomi Marie Carter. The plaintiffs claimed I had verbally agreed, in the presence of multiple witnesses, to assume responsibility for the mortgage payments on 428 Maple Grove Avenue. They claimed financial damages of $600,000, representing the full remaining balance of the 30-year mortgage. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe properly. The office suddenly felt too small, too bright, too full of people who had no idea my entire life was imploding. Naomi? My colleague, Gerard, appeared beside my desk. You okay? You look pale. I'm fine, I managed. Just need some air. I grabbed my phone and headed to the stairwell, the one place in the building that was usually empty. On the 10th floor landing, I called Rebecca. I got the documents, I said without preamble. Who are these witnesses they're claiming? Rebecca's voice was calm, professional. Your sister-in-law, Diane Carter. Brandon's business partner, Robert Green. And a neighbor from your apartment building, Harold Price. I've never even met Brandon's sister. My voice rose. She lives in California. We've exchanged maybe 3 words at his mother's birthday party 2 years ago. And the business partner? Robert? He came to our apartment once for dinner like 5 months ago. We talked about sports and weather. That's it. What about Harold Price? I thought hard. The old man in 4B? Brandon chats with him sometimes in the parking lot. I've said hello in passing, but that's all. So none of these people were present during any conversation about the mortgage? No. Because there was no conversation. I never agreed to anything. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Naomi, they're either lying or Brandon convinced them you agreed to something you didn't. Either way, it's their word against yours unless we can prove otherwise. How do we do that? Detective Mitchell is working on it. He's been following Brandon since Saturday. In the meantime, I need you to write down everything you remember. Every conversation about the house, the dates, the times, exactly what was said. We need to build a timeline. Okay, I can do that. One more thing. Do not, under any circumstances, talk to Brandon, Patricia, or any of these witnesses. If they contact you, document it, but don't engage. Everything they say can and will be used to twist your words. After hanging up, I sat on the stairs, staring at the concrete wall. How had my life become this? 2 weeks ago, my biggest concern was whether to refinance my car loan. Now I was being sued for my entire life savings by my own husband. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You can still make this right. Pay what you owe. I screenshot it and sent it to Rebecca. Back at my desk, I tried to work but gave up after an hour. My boss, Mr. Henderson, called me into his office. Naomi, I'm concerned. Your performance this past week has been below your usual standards. Is everything all right at home? I wanted to lie to maintain the professional facade. But what came out was, I'm going through a divorce. And a lawsuit. I'm sorry. I'll do better. Mr. Henderson's stern expression softened. I'm sorry to hear that. Look, why don't you take the rest of the week off? Personal time. Get your situation sorted out. I can't afford to miss work right now. You can't afford not to. When personal issues affect your professional life, taking time to address them is the best investment you can make. He smiled slightly. That's financial advice I learned the hard way. I accepted gratefully and went home early, but not to my apartment. Back to Tessa's couch, which had become my home base. Tessa was on a day shift, so the apartment was empty. I pulled out my laptop and started writing everything down. Dates, conversations, exact words where I could remember them. The document grew to 12 pages. At 4:30 p.m., Rebecca called again. Detective Mitchell has something. Can you come to my office? I drove downtown, my heart pounding. Rebecca's office felt different this time, less intimidating, more like a war room. Detective Mitchell sat across from Rebecca's desk, a manila folder in his lap. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Miss Carter. He shook my hand. I've been following your husband since Saturday morning. Would you like to see what I found? He opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Brandon's car parked outside a modern townhouse in the suburbs. Brandon walking into that same townhouse with a woman, his arm around her waist. The woman was tall, had long dark hair, and wore a red dress that looked expensive. Who is she? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Her name is Simone Reed. She works at the same real estate agency as your husband. They've been colleagues for about a year. More photos. Brandon and Simone at a restaurant, holding hands across the table. Brandon and Simone leaving her townhouse together Sunday morning, looking disheveled and happy. The townhouse is registered to her, Detective Mitchell continued. But I checked the purchase records. It was bought 8 months ago. The down payment was $75,000 cash. Rebecca leaned forward. Cash from where? That's what's interesting. I pulled financial records, as much as I legally could access. Brandon made several large cash withdrawals from his joint account with Naomi around that time, totaling about $80,000 over 3 months. I felt sick. He used our money to buy his mistress a house? It appears so. And there's more. Detective Mitchell pulled out another document. The house Brandon bought for his mother? The real estate agent who handled that sale was Simone Reed. Everything clicked into place. She inflated the price. Most likely. The house is worth about $320,000 based on comparable properties in the area. Brandon paid $480,000. The difference went somewhere. To Simone, Rebecca said, as a kickback for the inflated sale. Can we prove that? I asked. I'm working on it, Detective Mitchell said. But even without absolute proof, the pattern is clear. Brandon has been systematically using marital funds to support his affair and enrich his mistress. The lawsuit against you is likely their endgame. Endgame for what? To drain your personal savings, presumably to continue funding their lifestyle. If they can force you to pay the mortgage, that's $3,200 a month from you, while they continue accessing whatever's left in the joint accounts. Rebecca added, and if the lawsuit succeeds, they could potentially claim all $600,000 of your savings. Then Brandon divorces you, marries Simone, and they live happily ever after on your money. The casual cruelty of it stunned me. 7 years of marriage reduced to a con game. What do we do? My voice sounded small, defeated. We fight, Rebecca said firmly. We have proof of the affair. We have suspicious financial transactions. We have an inflated property sale handled by the mistress. This isn't a legitimate lawsuit, this is attempted fraud. And we're going to prove it. Detective Mitchell nodded. I'll keep following Brandon, documenting everything. I'll also look into Simone's finances, see if there are any other irregularities. Thank you, I said. Both of you. On the drive back to Tessa's, my phone rang. Patricia. I shouldn't have answered. But anger made me reckless. What do you want, Patricia? I want you to drop this foolishness and pay what you owe. I don't owe you anything. The courts will decide that. Patricia's voice was smug. You think you're so smart with your fancy job and your savings account. But you're about to learn a hard lesson about family loyalty. Family loyalty? I laughed, but it was bitter. Did Brandon tell you about Simone? Silence. Did he tell you he's been having an affair? That he used our joint money to buy her a house? That your own house purchase was inflated, with Simone taking a cut? You're lying. Am I? Ask him about the townhouse on Riverside Drive. Ask him about the cash withdrawals. Ask him why he smells like her perfume. You're just trying to turn me against my son. No, Patricia. Your son is turning you into a pawn in his game. He's using you to get to my money. And when this is all over, when the truth comes out, you're going to lose everything too. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking so badly I had to pull over. Tessa called just as I parked in front of her building. Hey, are you okay? You sound weird. I just found out my husband has been planning to steal my money for months, possibly longer. I'm great. Come upstairs. I made dinner. We're going to eat and you're going to tell me everything and then we're going to make a plan to destroy him. Despite everything, I smiled. You're a good friend, Tessa. I know. Now get up here before the pasta gets cold. Over dinner, I showed Tessa the photos Detective Mitchell had given me. She stared at the image of Brandon and Simone together, her face hardening. He looks happy, she said quietly. Happier than I've seen him look with you in years. It hurt, but it was true. In the photos, Brandon looked relaxed, genuine. The way he used to look with me before money became the only thing that mattered. Do you think he ever loved me? I asked. Tessa considered the question seriously. Maybe. At first. But people change. Or maybe he always saw you as a means to an end, and you were just too in love to notice. That makes me sound stupid. It makes you human. Love makes us blind sometimes. That's not a character flaw, Naomi. That's just being vulnerable with the wrong person. That night, lying on the couch, I checked my bank accounts obsessively. My personal savings was still intact, thank God. The joint account had been frozen per Rebecca's motion. Brandon couldn't access it without both our signatures now. My phone buzzed at 1 a.m. A text from Brandon, "You've made your choice. You'll regret this." I screenshot it and sent it to Rebecca, then blocked Brandon's number. Then I blocked Patricia's number too. Tomorrow, Rebecca said, we'd start preparing our defense in earnest. We had evidence now. We had proof of the affair, the suspicious transactions, the inflated house purchase. But would it be enough? I fell asleep wondering if truth actually mattered in court, or if money and good lawyers could twist anything into any shape they wanted. Rebecca's conference room became my second home over the next 2 weeks. We met every other day, building the case brick by brick. Rebecca's paralegal, a sharp woman named Monica who wore maroon power suits, helped compile financial records that painted a damning picture of Brandon's behavior. Look at this pattern, Monica said, spreading bank statements across the conference table. Every Friday for 6 months, Brandon withdrew between $2,000 and $3,000 in cash. That's roughly $60,000 total. Then suddenly, the withdrawal stopped about 3 weeks ago. Right after I refused to pay the mortgage, I noted. He ran out of easy money. Rebecca circled dates on a calendar. And here's where it gets interesting. The cash withdrawals correlate directly with charges on Simone Reed's credit cards. Detective Mitchell pulled her financial records legally through subpoena. She's buying designer clothes, expensive dinners, a new car. All within days of Brandon's cash withdrawals. So he's literally handing her cash and she's spending it immediately. Exactly. And get this. Rebecca pulled out another document. Simone Reed filed her taxes last year claiming income of $67,000 from her real estate commissions. But her spending patterns suggest she's living on at least twice that amount. The difference has to be coming from somewhere. From Brandon. From our joint account. From my money. Monica nodded. We can demonstrate a clear pattern of marital asset dissipation. That alone could get the lawsuit dismissed and potentially result in Brandon owing you reimbursement. What about the witnesses? I asked. The ones claiming I verbally agreed to pay the mortgage. Rebecca's expression hardened. That's where Detective Mitchell's continued surveillance becomes critical. He's been watching all 3 of them. As if on cue, Detective Mitchell arrived, carrying his ever-present manila folder. He looked tired but satisfied. Good news and better news, he announced, settling into a chair. The good news is that Robert Green, Brandon's business partner, has a gambling problem. Turns out Brandon paid off $15,000 in gambling debts for him about a month ago. In exchange, Robert agreed to testify that he heard you promise to pay the mortgage. That's good news? I asked. It is when we can prove it. I have photographs of Robert at the Riverside Casino racking up debts. I have bank records showing Brandon's payment. And I have a witness who'll testify that Robert bragged about Brandon helping him out in exchange for a small favor. Rebecca smiled. A purchased witness. That destroys his credibility entirely. What's the better news? I asked. Detective Mitchell grinned. Brandon's sister, Diane Carter, the one who supposedly witnessed this verbal agreement? She was in California during the entire time period in question. I have plane records, credit card statements showing purchases in San Diego, and social media posts with location tags. She couldn't have witnessed anything because she was 2,000 miles away. I felt something loosening in my chest. Hope maybe. So 2 of the 3 witnesses are lying. Which leaves Harold Price your neighbor, Rebecca said. What did you find on him? Detective Mitchell's grin faded slightly. That's more complicated. Harold Price is a 72-year-old retiree. Clean record, no obvious financial issues. But I did find something interesting. He's close friends with Patricia Carter. Very close. They attend the same church, they have lunch together twice a week, and she's been helping him with his own financial issues. So Patricia got to him, I said. Most likely. She probably convinced him you'd be fine, that this was just a family matter, and his testimony would help a woman in need. Harold seems like a genuinely good person who got manipulated. Can we prove that? Rebecca asked. I can prove the relationship between Harold and Patricia. Whether that's enough to discredit his testimony depends on how he performs on the stand. If he's clearly uncomfortable lying, the judge will notice. Rebecca made notes on her legal pad. Okay. So our defense strategy is multi-pronged. 1. We demonstrate the affair and the financial dissipation of marital assets. 2. We prove 2 of the 3 witnesses are either lying or couldn't have witnessed what they claim. 3. We attack the credibility of the house purchase itself, showing the inflated price and Simone's involvement. And 4. We establish that Naomi never had ownership stake in the property, so no verbal agreement would even be legally binding. What about Patricia? I asked. She's listed as a plaintiff too. Patricia's involvement is interesting, Rebecca said. Legally, she has standing to sue because she's the homeowner. But the more we can show that she's complicit in Brandon's scheme, the weaker her case becomes. If she knew about the affair, knew about the inflated house price, and is actively participating in an attempt to defraud you, the judge will not be sympathetic. Monica pulled out a timeline chart. I've been building a comprehensive timeline of events. May I walk through it? We all nodded. 8 months ago, Brandon and Simone begin their affair. We have text messages Detective Mitchell recovered showing flirtation starting around this time. 7 months ago, Brandon begins making large cash withdrawals. 6 months ago, Simone purchases her townhouse, using an $75,000 cash down payment. 5 months ago, Simone handles the sale of Patricia's house, inflating the price significantly. 4 months ago, Brandon increases cash withdrawals. 3 months ago, the mortgage payments on Patricia's house begin. 3 weeks ago, Brandon presents Naomi with the mortgage documents and demands she pay. 2 weeks ago, when Naomi refuses, Brandon and Patricia file the lawsuit. The timeline made it clear. This wasn't a spontaneous family crisis. This was a calculated plan, executed over months, designed to extract as much money from me as possible. They planned this, I said slowly. The whole thing. The affair, the house, the lawsuit. It was all planned. It certainly looks that way, Rebecca agreed, which actually works in our favor. Premeditation shows intent to defraud. That's a stronger case than spontaneous financial disagreement. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, you're making a mistake. Drop the lawsuit defense and we can still work this out. I showed it to Rebecca. They're getting nervous, she said with satisfaction. Good. Let them sweat. Detective Mitchell leaned forward. There's one more thing. I've been surveilling Simone's townhouse. Brandon has essentially moved in. He's there every night all weekend. He's not even pretending to maintain the marriage anymore. Can we use that? I asked. Absolutely. Abandonment of the marital home strengthens your position for the divorce proceedings that will inevitably follow. But more importantly, it shows a pattern. He's chosen Simone over you, he's spending marital assets on her, and now he's trying to force you to fund his mother's house so he can continue that lifestyle. Rebecca tapped her pen against her notepad. Naomi, I have to ask, how are you holding up? This is a lot to process. Honestly, I felt numb. The man I'd married, the person I'd trusted with my life and my future, had turned out to be a stranger. Worse than a stranger. A con artist. I'm angry, I admitted. I'm so angry I can barely sleep. But I'm also determined. They're not getting my money. I worked too hard for it. Good, Rebecca said firmly. Hold on to that anger. It'll fuel you through the trial. Monica started packing up documents. The trial is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. That gives us time to depose the witnesses, gather more evidence, and prepare your testimony. Naomi, you're going to be on the stand. You need to be ready for their lawyer to try to paint you as selfish, greedy, and uncaring. I can handle it. Can you? Rebecca's gaze was penetrating. Because they're going to bring up every financial decision you've ever made. Every time you bought something for yourself instead of giving to others. Every penny you saved. They're going to try to make you feel guilty for having money and not sharing it. I earn my money legally and ethically. I have nothing to be ashamed of. That's the attitude. Hold on to it. After the meeting, I sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at the steering wheel. My phone showed 17 missed calls from blocked numbers. I didn't need caller ID to know it was Brandon, Patricia, or their allies. Tessa called. Hey, how'd the meeting go? Good. We have a solid defense. The witnesses are discredited. The affair is documented. We're going to win. So why do you sound so sad? Because winning meant accepting that 7 years of my life had been a lie. Because winning meant admitting I'd been fooled, used, and manipulated. Because winning meant starting over from nothing at 34 years old. I just wish it didn't have to be this way, I said quietly. I know, honey. But you can't control what Brandon chose to do. You can only control how you respond. And you're responding with strength and dignity. That's something to be proud of. Thanks, Tessa. Come home. I made your favorite comfort food. Mac and cheese with extra cheese. I smiled despite myself. I'll be there in 20 minutes. But before I could start the car, someone knocked on my window. I jumped, heart racing, and turned to see Harold Price, the neighbor from my apartment building, standing there nervously. I cracked the window. Mr. Price. Mrs. Carter, I need to talk to you. Please. Against my better judgment, I rolled the window down fully. What do you want? Harold looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. I wanted to apologize. Patricia, she told me you'd agreed to help her with the house. She said you were just being stubborn, that you'd come around eventually, and my testimony would help smooth things over. I didn't know. Didn't know what? That you'd never agreed to anything. That Brandon was... He trailed off. I saw him with that woman, Simone, at the grocery store last week. The way he looked at her. And I realized Patricia had lied to me. So you're recanting your testimony? I don't want to lie under oath. I'm a Christian man. I can't do that. Harold pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is a letter explaining that I was misled. That I never actually heard you agree to anything. I'm giving it to my lawyer tomorrow. I took the envelope, hardly daring to believe it. Why are you telling me this? Because it's the right thing to do. And because... He hesitated. Because I have a daughter your age. If someone did this to her, I'd want someone to stand up for her. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you, Mr. Price. You have no idea what this means. I'm sorry for my part in this. I hope you can forgive an old fool. There's nothing to forgive. You were lied to just like I was. Harold nodded and walked away, his shoulders bent. I sat in my car holding the envelope, and for the first time in weeks I felt like maybe, just maybe, justice was possible. I called Rebecca immediately. She answered on the first ring. Rebecca, Harold Price just recanted his testimony. Silence. Then, say that again. Harold Price. He just gave me a letter explaining that Patricia misled him. He's telling his lawyer tomorrow that he can't testify because he never actually heard me agree to anything. Naomi, that's huge. With Robert Greene's testimony bought and paid for, Diane Carter proven to be out of state, and now Harold Price recanting, they have no witnesses. None. Their entire case just collapsed. I leaned my head back against the seat. Does this mean we win? It means we're very likely to win. But we still need to prove the fraud, the affair, and the financial manipulation. We're not stopping our investigation. We're going to make sure Brandon and Patricia face consequences for this. Good. After hanging up, I texted Tessa, big news. Tell you when I get there. Make extra mac and cheese. As I drove toward Tessa's apartment, toward my temporary home, toward my uncertain future, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. Control. Hope. Brandon had tried to break me, to reduce me to nothing more than a source of money. But I was still standing. And I was going to make sure he regretted ever underestimating me. The next 3 weeks moved in a blur of legal motions, document requests, and depositions. Rebecca filed for full discovery of Brandon and Patricia's financial records, phone records, and communications. Their lawyer, a slick man named Thomas Whitmore who wore expensive suits and talked in circles, tried to block every request. Your Honor, this is a simple breach of verbal contract case, Whitmore argued during a pretrial hearing. The plaintiff's financial records beyond the property in question are irrelevant. Rebecca stood, her green blazer catching the courtroom light. Your Honor, when the defendant is accused of owing $600,000 based on a verbal agreement with no documentation, the plaintiff's credibility is absolutely relevant. If the plaintiffs are shown to have engaged in financial impropriety, fraud, or manipulation, it directly impacts whether the court should believe their testimony about this alleged verbal agreement. Judge Rodriguez, the same judge who would oversee the trial, looked over her glasses at Whitmore. I agree with the defendant's counsel. Discovery is granted. Both parties will provide full financial disclosure within 2 weeks. Whitmore's face reddened, but he nodded stiffly. After the hearing, Rebecca and I met with Detective Mitchell at a coffee shop near the courthouse. He spread documents across the small table, keeping his voice low despite the noise of the espresso machine. The discovery is going to be revealing, he said. But I've already found something interesting through my own investigation. Simone Reed isn't just Brandon's mistress. She's his business partner in a separate venture. What kind of venture? I asked, sipping my coffee. They formed an LLC 6 months ago. SB Properties. Brandon and Simone. They're planning to flip houses together. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. Using what capital? That's the question. The LLC has $150,000 in starting capital. I'm betting that money came from marital assets Brandon diverted. Can we trace it? Working on it. But here's where it gets interesting. One of SB Properties' first purchases was going to be a rental property. Guess who they were planning to rent it to? Patricia, I guessed. Close. They were going to buy it, rent it to Patricia at below market rates, then use your mortgage payments on Patricia's current house to fund the rental property purchase. Essentially, they'd be using your money to buy themselves income-generating property. I set down my coffee feeling sick. It just keeps getting worse. It does, Detective Mitchell agreed. But every layer we uncover makes their lawsuit look more fraudulent. This wasn't about helping Patricia. This was about creating a money pipeline from you to them. Rebecca made notes. We need to include this in our discovery requests. The LLC formation, the business plan, everything. Thomas Whitmore is going to fight it, but the judge will see the relevance. Over the next week, documents flooded in. Bank statements, credit card records, phone logs, text messages. Monica created a massive spreadsheet tracking every dollar, every call, every message that seemed relevant. This is incredible, she said, her fingers flying over her keyboard. Brandon was sloppy. He didn't even try to hide most of it. I looked over her shoulder at the spreadsheet. Red highlighted cells marked suspicious transactions. There were dozens of them. He didn't think I'd fight back, I realized. He thought I'd just pay. He underestimated you, Rebecca said. People like Brandon always do. They assume money equals power, and since they're trying to take your money, you must be powerless. They're about to learn different. The deposition started. First up was Robert Green, Brandon's business partner. Rebecca scheduled his deposition at her office, and I sat in the corner, watching as she systematically dismantled him. Mr. Green, you stated in your affidavit that you were present when Naomi Carter verbally agreed to pay the mortgage on Patricia Carter's house. Is that correct? Robert, a heavy-set man in his 40s, nodded. Yes. I was at their apartment for dinner. What date was this? I don't remember exactly. Maybe 5 months ago? 5 months ago. Can you describe the conversation? Robert shifted uncomfortably. Brandon and Naomi were talking about his mother needing a house. Naomi said she'd help out. She said she'd help out, or she said she'd pay the mortgage? Well, helping out means paying, right? Does it? If I say I'll help you move, does that mean I'm paying your moving costs, or does it mean I'm assisting physically? I guess it depends. Exactly. So when you say Naomi agreed to help out, you're interpreting her words to mean she'd pay the mortgage. But that's your interpretation, not her actual words. Brandon said that's what she meant. Brandon said, not Naomi. Brandon interpreted her words for you. Robert was sweating now. Look, I'm just trying to help my friend. Your friend who paid off $15,000 in gambling debts for you 6 weeks ago? Robert's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Rebecca slid a bank statement across the table. This is a transfer from Brandon Carter's account to the Riverside Casino, paying your outstanding balance. Would you like to revise your testimony? The deposition fell apart after that. Robert admitted he'd never heard me explicitly agree to anything. He admitted Brandon had asked him to testify as a favor. He admitted the gambling debt payment. You understand that perjury is a crime? Rebecca asked quietly. I didn't commit perjury. I misunderstood. Then you'll be withdrawing your affidavit? Yes. Yes, I'll withdraw it. After Robert left, looking defeated and scared, Rebecca turned to me with satisfaction. That's 2 witnesses down. Next was Diane Carter, Brandon's sister. She appeared via video conference from California, her face pixelated on the screen. Rebecca was brief with her. Miss Carter, you stated you witnessed Naomi Carter agree to pay your mother's mortgage. When did this occur? During Thanksgiving last year. Thanksgiving? So November. You were present at Brandon and Naomi's apartment? Yes. That's interesting because I have your credit card statements showing purchases in San Diego, California on Thanksgiving Day. I have restaurant receipts. I have social media posts with you tagged at a restaurant called the Marine Room in La Jolla. How do you explain being in 2 places at once? Diane's face on the screen went rigid. Maybe it was a different holiday. Which holiday? I don't remember exactly. You don't remember which holiday you allegedly witnessed a conversation about a $600,000 commitment? That seems like something you'd remember clearly. I'm confused about the dates. Or you're lying. Rebecca's voice stayed calm, conversational. Miss Carter, did Brandon ask you to provide this testimony? He said Mom needed help. That's not what I asked. Did Brandon specifically ask you to claim you witnessed this conversation? Long silence. He said Naomi had agreed and I was there, so he told you what to say and you agreed because he's your brother. I'm withdrawing my statement. Diane's voice was barely audible. I don't want to be involved in this anymore. She disconnected before Rebecca could ask more questions. That's 3 witnesses gone, Rebecca said with satisfaction. They have no case. But the biggest deposition was still coming. Brandon himself. When Brandon walked into Rebecca's conference room, flanked by Thomas Whitmore, he looked different. Thinner. Tired. His eyes landed on me and for a moment I saw something that might have been regret. But then his expression hardened. Let's get this over with, he said, sitting down across from Rebecca. The deposition lasted 4 hours. Rebecca was relentless. Mr. Carter, how many times did you discuss the house purchase with your wife before completing the transaction? Several times. Define several. I don't know, multiple conversations. Yet Naomi says the first she heard of the house was when you presented her with the mortgage documents. Which is it? She's misremembering. She's misremembering or you're lying? Whitmore interrupted. Objection. Argumentative. This is a deposition, not a trial, Rebecca said calmly. I can ask what I want. Mr. Carter, let me rephrase. Did you at any time tell your wife the actual purchase price of the house before you bought it? Brandon hesitated. I might have mentioned it. Might have. So you're not sure. I told her it was expensive. Did you tell her it was $480,000 for a house worth $320,000? I didn't know the actual market value. Rebecca pulled out the property assessment. This is the tax assessment from the county. It values the property at $318,000. You're a real estate agent. You know how to read property values. Did you or did you not know the house was overpriced? Market values fluctuate. Mr. Carter, yes or no? Did you know the house was overpriced? I trusted Simone's assessment. Simone Reed. Your mistress. Brandon's jaw clenched. We're colleagues. Colleagues who happened to be having an affair. Colleagues who formed an LLC together. Colleagues who, according to your text messages, discussed using the proceeds from your mother's house sale to fund future property investments. Whitmore stood. I'm advising my client not to answer questions about his personal relationships. His personal relationships are directly relevant to this case, Rebecca shot back. The affair, the joint business venture, the financial manipulation. It's all connected to the fraudulent lawsuit against my client. The deposition devolved into arguments between lawyers after that. But Rebecca had gotten what she needed. Brandon's answers, his evasions, his obvious discomfort. All of it would look terrible in front of a judge. After Brandon and Whitmore left, I exhaled deeply. That was intense. That was victory, Rebecca corrected. Did you see his face when I brought up the text messages? He knows we have everything. He knows the lawsuit is going to fail. So why hasn't he dropped it? Pride. Desperation. Maybe he still thinks he can convince the judge. Or maybe Simone is pushing him to keep fighting. Rebecca gathered her notes. Either way, we're ready for trial. More than ready. Detective Mitchell appeared in the doorway. One more thing before you celebrate. I traced the LLC's starting capital. $150,000 like I said. It came from a loan Brandon took out against his mother's house. I stared at him. Patricia's house? Yes. He secured a home equity line of credit using her property as collateral. She had to sign off on it so she knew. The money went straight into SB Properties. So they're using the house I'm supposedly obligated to pay for as collateral to fund their business? My voice rose. And Patricia knows? She knows. She's complicit in everything. Rebecca smiled grimly. That's going to look wonderful in court. A mother and son conspiring to defraud the daughter-in-law. No judge will be sympathetic to that. That night at Tessa's apartment, I finally allowed myself to feel the weight of everything. The betrayal. The calculation. The sheer audacity of what Brandon and Patricia had tried to do. They really thought they'd get away with it, I said, staring at the ceiling from the couch. Narcissists always do, Tessa replied from the kitchen where she was making tea. They're so convinced of their own rightness that they can't imagine consequences. I loved him, Tessa. For years I really loved him. I know you did. How did I not see it? How did I miss all the signs? Because you're a good person who wanted to believe the best about your husband. That's not a flaw, Naomi. That's humanity. Brandon is the one who failed. Not you. I wanted to believe her. Some days I did. Other days, I lay awake running through 7 years of memories, looking for the moment I should have known, the red flag I should have seen. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Whitmore just contacted me. They want to settle. They're offering to drop the lawsuit if you don't press charges for fraud. I sat up so fast I almost fell off the couch. Tessa, they want to settle. What? Tessa came into the living room, tea forgotten. They're giving up? I called Rebecca immediately. What exactly did Whitmore say? He said, and I quote, "My clients recognize that continuing this litigation may not be in anyone's best interest. They're prepared to dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice if Mrs. Carter agrees not to pursue criminal fraud charges or countersue for damages." They're scared. They should be. We have enough evidence to not only win the lawsuit but potentially see Brandon and Simone face fraud charges, and Patricia as an accessory. They're trying to cut their losses. What do you think I should do? Rebecca paused. Normally I'd say settling is smart. It saves time, money, and stress. But Naomi, these people tried to steal your entire life savings through an elaborate fraud. Do you want them to walk away with no consequences? I thought about Brandon's face during the deposition. The arrogance. The certainty that he'd done nothing wrong. I thought about Patricia's smug phone calls, her accusations that I was selfish and ungrateful. I thought about Simone, the woman who'd helped orchestrate this entire scheme for her own financial gain. No, I said firmly. No settlement. We're going to trial. I want a judge to hear everything they did. I want it on record. And I want them to face the consequences of their actions. Are you sure? Trial is stressful. There's always a chance. I'm sure. They wanted to play games with my money, my life, my future. Now they get to play by the rules. Legal rules. With a judge watching. I could hear the smile in Rebecca's voice. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll tell Whitmore we're declining the settlement offer. See you in court in 2 weeks. After hanging up, I felt something shift inside me. Not happiness exactly, but determination, strength, power. Brandon had tried to make me a victim. Instead, he'd created an opponent. And I wasn't going to stop until justice was served. With the trial 2 weeks away, Detective Mitchell intensified his investigation. He'd been following Simone Reed, documenting her daily activities, her finances, and her connection to Brandon. What he found exceeded even Rebecca's expectations. We met at Rebecca's office on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Detective Mitchell spread out a new set of documents, his expression grim. "I've been digging into Simone's real estate career," he began. "She's been an agent for 3 years. In that time she's handled 42 transactions. Of those, 8 involved significant price discrepancies compared to market value." Rebecca leaned forward. 8? This is a pattern? It's systematic fraud. She inflates sale prices, pockets kickbacks from sellers who are in on the scheme, and splits the extra money with buyers who think they're getting investment properties. The buyers get screwed when they try to refinance or sell and discover the properties aren't worth what they paid. How has she not been caught? I asked. Because she's careful. She spaces the fraudulent sales out, mixes them with legitimate transactions, and uses different title companies. But once you know what to look for, the pattern is obvious. Detective Mitchell pulled out a spreadsheet. Patricia's house wasn't special. It was just another scam in a long line of scams. Monica, Rebecca's paralegal, was already typing furiously. This is huge. If we can prove Simone has a history of this behavior, it shows the house purchase was deliberately fraudulent, not an honest mistake. Can you prove it though? Rebecca asked Detective Mitchell. Do you have documentation? Better. I have a whistleblower. Another agent at their firm, a woman named Grace Liu, who's been suspicious of Simone for months. She's willing to testify that Simone regularly manipulates property values and that the company has received complaints. The company buried them because Simone generates high commissions. I felt a surge of vindication. So this wasn't even about me specifically. I was just the latest mark. Essentially, yes. Though Brandon's involvement adds a personal element. He specifically targeted you because of your savings. Detective Mitchell pulled out printed text messages. These are conversations between Brandon and Simone from 8 months ago, shortly after their affair started. Look at this one. I read the message, my hands shaking. Brandon, Naomi has over $600K saved. She's paranoid about protecting it. Never spends, just hoards. Simone, that's a shame. All that money just sitting there. Brandon, I know. I've tried getting her to invest in properties with me, but she always refuses. Says it's too risky. Simone, maybe there's another way. What if we make her think she has no choice? Brandon, like what? Simone, family emergency. Moral obligation. Something she can't say no to without looking like a terrible person. Brandon, my mom does need a new place. Her landlord is raising rent. Simone, perfect. I can handle the purchase. Make it look legitimate. And once we have access to that money, Brandon, we're set. Mom gets a house, you get your commission plus extra, and I finally tap into that account Naomi guards like Fort Knox. I set down the paper, bow rising in my throat. They planned everything. From the beginning. Yes, Rebecca said quietly. This was a calculated conspiracy to defraud you of your life savings. Brandon and Simone weren't just having an affair. They were partners in crime. Does Patricia know? I asked. Is she part of the conspiracy? Detective Mitchell nodded. I believe so. Look at this message from 2 weeks later. Brandon, talk to Mom about the house plan. She's on board. Says Naomi owes her for all the family dinners she's hosted. Simone, perfect. Make sure Mom plays up the needy angle. Really sell the struggling senior citizen thing. Brandon, oh she will. Mom's a pro at guilt trips. Naomi won't stand a chance. I stood up, pacing the conference room. They sat around planning how to manipulate me. How to steal from me. And I had no idea. Because you trusted them, Tessa said. She'd driven me to the meeting and was sitting quietly in the corner. Because you're a decent person who doesn't expect the people closest to you to be criminals. Rebecca organized the documents into folders. This changes our trial strategy. We're not just defending against a civil lawsuit anymore. We're exposing a criminal conspiracy. The judge needs to see this wasn't a family misunderstanding. This was premeditated fraud involving multiple parties. Can we get them arrested? I asked. Can they actually go to jail for this? Possibly. Once the trial concludes, if the evidence is as damning as we present it, the judge can refer the matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury. There are multiple criminal charges that could apply. Good. Monica looked up from her computer. I've been researching Grace Liu, the whistleblower. She's credible. Been with the real estate firm for 10 years, clean record, no financial issues that would suggest she's been bought. Her testimony about Simone's pattern of fraud will be powerful. Can we get her in court? Rebecca asked. She's already agreed. I have her contact information. She's actually relieved someone is finally investigating Simone. Over the next week, Rebecca prepared our case with military precision. Every document was organized, every witness was prepared, every argument was rehearsed. She made me practice my testimony, asking the same questions different ways, pushing me to stay calm under pressure. The judge needs to see you as credible, composed, and sympathetic, Rebecca explained. You're the victim here, but you need to present as strong, not pathetic. You stood up for yourself, you refused to be manipulated, and you're seeking justice. That's your narrative. What will Whitmore's strategy be? I asked. He'll try to paint you as selfish. He'll emphasize your savings, question why you didn't help family, suggest you're materialistic and cold. He'll make Patricia seem like a sympathetic senior citizen being abandoned by a cruel daughter-in-law. And he'll try to normalize Brandon's behavior, suggesting all marriages have financial disagreements. How do I counter that? By staying calm. By answering honestly. By not getting defensive. When he asks why you didn't help Patricia, you don't say, because she didn't deserve it. You say, because I was never given ownership of the property, never consulted on the purchase, and never agreed to assume financial responsibility for someone else's debt. We practiced for hours. By the end of the week, I could answer any question Rebecca threw at me without hesitation. Detective Mitchell continued his surveillance. 3 days before the trial, he called with one final piece of information. Brandon and Simone are panicking, he said. I've been monitoring their communications. They know their case is falling apart. They're discussing fleeing. Fleeing? Rebecca's voice sharpened. Leaving the jurisdiction? Simone has been researching countries without extradition treaties. Brandon has been liquidating assets. They're planning something. Can we stop them? Not unless they actually commit a crime that warrants immediate arrest. Right now they're just defendants in a civil suit. But if the judge believes they're a flight risk, she could restrict their movement pending trial. Rebecca immediately filed a motion alerting the court to the potential flight risk. Judge Rodriguez scheduled an emergency hearing. I sat in the courtroom the next morning, watching Brandon and Simone enter with Whitmore. Simone wore a modest blue dress, her hair pulled back, looking nothing like the glamorous woman from Detective Mitchell's photographs. Brandon wore a suit I'd bought him 2 years ago for a company event. Seeing him in it felt like a violation. Judge Rodriguez reviewed Rebecca's motion. Counsel, you're claiming the plaintiffs are preparing to flee the jurisdiction? Yes, Your Honor. We have evidence of communications discussing international travel to countries without extradition treaties, and evidence of asset liquidation. Whitmore stood. Your Honor, my clients have been researching vacation destinations. This is hardly evidence of intent to flee. As for asset liquidation, they're simply preparing for potential financial obligations resulting from this lawsuit. Mr. Whitmore, if your clients believe they'll win this lawsuit, why are they preparing for financial obligations? Judge Rodriguez asked dryly. Whitmore had no good answer to that. Judge Rodriguez ruled. I'm going to restrict the defendant's movements. Surrender of passports within 24 hours. No travel outside the county without court approval. Violation will result in immediate sanctions. Are we clear? Brandon looked furious. Simone looked scared. Whitmore nodded stiffly. After the hearing, as I walked past them in the hallway, Brandon grabbed my arm. I froze. Naomi, please, he said quietly. We can still fix this. Drop the trial. Let's just divorce quietly and move on. I looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face. The face I'd once loved. The face that had smiled at me on our wedding day, promised me forever, sworn to cherish me. Take your hand off me, I said calmly. He released my arm. I never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did. You planned it. For months. I've seen the messages, Brandon. I know everything. Those messages were taken out of context. No, they weren't. And in 3 days a judge is going to read them too. And then everyone will know exactly what you are. I walked away, Tessa at my side. Behind me, I heard Simone say something to Brandon, her voice sharp and accusing. Let them fight. Let them panic. Let them realize that actions have consequences. That night, unable to sleep, I reviewed the trial binder Rebecca had prepared for me. Hundreds of pages of evidence. Bank statements, text messages, property records, witness statements. Every piece of the puzzle assembled to show the full picture of betrayal. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're destroying your family over money. Shame on you. I screenshot it, sent it to Rebecca, and blocked the number. They could try to intimidate me all they wanted. I wasn't backing down. Tessa came out of her bedroom wrapped in a robe. Can't sleep? Too wired. Trial starts Monday. You're going to win. I know. But that doesn't make me feel better. I closed the binder. I thought my marriage would end differently, you know? If it had to end. I thought we'd have one of those sad but respectful divorces where people say, we grew apart, and we want different things. Not this. Not fraud and lawsuits and criminal investigations. Brandon made his choices. You're just responding to them. Am I though? Or am I being vindictive? Tessa sat beside me on the couch. Naomi, seeking justice isn't vindictive. Protecting your assets from theft isn't vindictive. Standing up for yourself when people try to rob you isn't vindictive. You have every right to see this through. But what if I'm just angry and hurt and I'm going to regret this? Then you regret it later. But right now, with the information you have, you're making the right choice. Trust yourself. I leaned against her shoulder. Thank you. For everything. For letting me stay here, for supporting me, for believing in me. That's what friends do. And for the record, when this is over and you win, I'm taking you out for the most expensive dinner we can find. And you're paying because you'll still have all your money. I laughed and it felt good. After weeks of stress and fear and anger, laughing felt like coming up for air. Monday morning was coming. The trial was coming. Justice was coming. And I was ready. The courthouse steps felt steeper than they had during pretrial hearings. Maybe because this time it was real. Final. The bailiff would call us in, the judge would preside, and my entire future would be decided based on who told the most convincing story. I wore a maroon dress that Tessa had insisted projected confidence without arrogance. My hair was pulled back in a neat bun. No jewelry except small earrings. Rebecca wanted me to look professional but approachable, successful but not flashy. Remember, Rebecca said as we walked up the steps together, stay calm. Answer only what's asked. Don't volunteer information. And don't let Whitmore bait you into anger. I know you know. But I'm going to keep reminding you anyway. Inside, the courtroom was already filling with people. I recognized the court reporter setting up her equipment. A few other lawyers with cases scheduled later in the day sat in the back rows, waiting. And there, at the plaintiff's table, sat Brandon and Patricia. Brandon wore a navy suit. Patricia wore a conservative dress and pearls, looking every bit the fragile senior citizen she wanted the court to believe she was. Neither looked at me as I entered. Simone sat in the gallery behind them, also dressed conservatively. Detective Mitchell had confirmed she was listed as a potential witness. Judge Rodriguez entered promptly at 9 a.m. We all stood. Please be seated. We're here for Carter and Carter versus Naomi Carter. This is a civil suit regarding alleged breach of verbal contract. Counsel, are both sides ready? Ready, Your Honor, Rebecca said. Ready, Your Honor, Whitmore echoed. Then let's begin. Mr. Whitmore, your opening statement. Whitmore stood, buttoning his jacket, and approached the jury box. Wait, no. There was no jury. This was a bench trial. Judge Rodriguez would decide everything. Whitmore caught himself mid-step and redirected to address the judge directly. Your Honor, this is a simple case about family betrayal. Patricia Carter is a 68-year-old widow who dedicated her life to raising her son, Brandon, as a single mother. She worked 2 jobs, sacrificed everything, and asked for little in return. When she finally needed help, when her son found her a beautiful home where she could live comfortably in her retirement years, her daughter-in-law, Naomi Carter, promised to assist with the mortgage payments. This wasn't a casual promise. This was a solemn commitment made in front of witnesses, made in the context of family obligation and love. But Naomi Carter has refused to honor that commitment. She has over $600,000 in personal savings, yet she won't spare $3,200 a month to help her elderly mother-in-law. That's what this case is about, Your Honor. Honoring your word and honoring your family. Whitmore sat down. He kept it short, emotional, and simple. I had to admit it was effective. If I didn't know the truth, I might have been swayed. Rebecca stood. She didn't approach the judge's bench. She stayed at our table, grounded and solid. Your Honor, this is indeed a simple case, but not in the way plaintiff's counsel suggests. This is a case about fraud. Premeditated, calculated fraud designed to separate Naomi Carter from her life savings. Over the course of this trial, we will prove that the house purchase was fraudulent from the beginning. The price was inflated by more than $160,000 above market value. The real estate agent who handled the sale, Simone Reed, is Brandon Carter's mistress and business partner. Brandon Carter used marital funds without Naomi's knowledge or consent to purchase this property. He then presented her with mortgage documents and demanded she pay, despite the fact that her name does not appear on the property deed. When Naomi refused, Brandon and Patricia Carter fabricated a lawsuit based on witnesses who have either recanted their testimony or have been proven to have committed perjury. This isn't about family obligation, Your Honor. This is about a scheme to steal $600,000 from a woman who worked her entire life to build financial security. And we're going to prove every word of it. Rebecca sat down. Judge Rodriguez made notes, her expression unreadable. Mr. Whitmore, call your first witness. The plaintiff calls Patricia Carter to the stand. Patricia walked to the witness stand slowly as if her joints pained her. She raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth. Whitmore approached gently. Mrs. Carter, can you tell the court about your relationship with your daughter-in-law, Naomi? Well, I thought we had a good relationship, Patricia said, her voice quavering slightly. I welcomed her into our family when she married Brandon. I hosted holiday dinners, tried to make her feel included. She always seemed sweet, if a bit reserved about money matters. Can you explain what you mean by reserved about money matters? She was very protective of her savings, which I understood. She'd worked hard for it. But sometimes it felt like money was more important to her than family. I kept my expression neutral, though the accusation stung. Mrs. Carter, can you tell the court about the house purchase? My landlord kept raising my rent. I'm on a fixed income, Social Security, and a small pension. It was getting hard to make ends meet. Brandon, being the wonderful son he is, found me a beautiful house. 3 bedrooms so I'd have space for grandchildren to visit when Brandon and Naomi had them. It was perfect. Did you discuss the house with Naomi before purchasing? Yes. At a family dinner, Brandon, Naomi, and I discussed it. Naomi said she wanted to help. She understood how difficult things were for me. She said she wanted to help. Can you be more specific? She said, Patricia, you deserve a nice home. We'll make sure you get it. Those were her exact words. I understood that to mean they'd help with payments. Did she object to helping with the mortgage at that time? No, not at all. She seemed happy to do it. That's why I'm so shocked by her behavior now. Whitmore nodded sympathetically. How has this situation affected you? Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. It's been devastating. I'm living in a house I can't afford. The mortgage is more than my entire monthly income. I'm scared I'm going to lose everything. And the worst part is knowing my daughter-in-law, someone I welcomed into my family, is the reason I'm in this position. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. No further questions. Rebecca stood for cross-examination. Her expression was neutral, professional. Mrs. Carter, you testified that you're living in a house you can't afford. Is that correct? Yes. The mortgage is $3,200 a month. And your monthly income is less than that? Yes. My Social Security and pension combined are about $2,400 a month. So you're short $800 every month, not counting utilities, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Correct. Yes. That's why I need Naomi's help. Mrs. Carter, did you know the house was overpriced when you purchased it? Patricia hesitated. I trusted my son and the real estate agent. That wasn't my question. Did you personally know that the house was being sold for $480,000 when comparable properties in the neighborhood were selling for $320,000? I'm not a real estate expert. But you were shown the property assessment, weren't you? The county tax assessment that valued the property at $318,000. I might have seen that. You might have seen a document showing the house was worth $160,000 less than you were paying for it, and you still bought it? My son said it was a good investment. Rebecca pulled out a document. This is a home equity line of credit taken out on your property 6 months after purchase. You signed this document. The credit line is for $150,000, and the funds were transferred to an LLC called SB Properties. Did you know Brandon was using your house as collateral for a business loan? Patricia's confident expression faltered. He needed capital for his business. So you knowingly allowed your son to use the house, which you claim you can't afford, as collateral for a risky business venture? He said it would help us both in the long run. Mrs. Carter, at this family dinner where you claim Naomi promised to pay your mortgage, was Simone Reed discussed? I don't know who that is. Really? Simone Reed, the real estate agent who handled your house purchase. You never met her? I met the agent, but I don't remember her name. You don't remember the name of the woman who sold you a house overpriced by $160,000? That seems odd. Whitmore objected. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on, Ms. Wilson. Rebecca nodded. Mrs. Carter, you attend Riverside Community Church, correct? Yes, for 15 years. And you're friendly with Harold Price, one of the original witnesses in this case? Harold is a friend, yes. Did you ask Harold to testify that he heard Naomi agree to pay your mortgage? I told him the truth. That Naomi had agreed and was backing out. But that's not true, is it? Because Naomi never agreed. So you asked your friend to lie for you. I didn't ask him to lie. But he recanted his testimony, Mrs. Carter. He sent a letter to his attorney and to this court stating you misled him. Are you calling him a liar? Patricia's face reddened. I'm calling my daughter-in-law ungrateful. Ungrateful for what? For being asked to pay $600,000 for a house she doesn't own? For being sued when she refused to participate in fraud? Objection, Whitmore called. Counsel is testifying. Withdrawn. Rebecca returned to our table. No further questions. Patricia stepped down looking shaken. The confident, sympathetic senior citizen image had cracked. Judge Rodriguez called a 15-minute recess. In the hallway, Rebecca looked satisfied. She was defensive, inconsistent, and showed she knew about the business loan. That's good for us. What about the family dinner she mentioned? I asked. I never said those words she quoted. I know. We'll address that when you testify. Right now, we planted doubt about her credibility. That's enough. When court resumed, Whitmore called Brandon to the stand. My stomach clenched watching him walk to the witness box, place his hand on the Bible, swear to tell the truth. The truth. From Brandon. That would be a first. Whitmore led Brandon through his testimony carefully. The struggling mother. The dutiful son. The search for an affordable house that turned out to be more expensive than expected. The family dinner where Naomi supposedly agreed to help. Mr. Carter, did your wife know about the house purchase before you bought it? Yes. We discussed it several times. Did she object? Not initially. She seemed supportive. But after we bought it and I showed her the mortgage documents, she changed her mind. Said she never agreed to pay anything. How did that make you feel? Betrayed. Hurt. My mother was counting on us. I'd made commitments based on Naomi's word. And then she just backed out. Mr. Carter, your wife has accused you of having an affair. Is that true? Brandon looked directly at the judge. My marriage had problems. Naomi was obsessed with money, constantly checking accounts, questioning every purchase. We grew apart. Yes, I developed feelings for someone else. But that has nothing to do with my mother's house. Whitmore nodded. No further questions. Rebecca stood for cross-examination, and I could see the shift in her posture. This was what she'd been waiting for. Mr. Carter, you testified that you discussed the house purchase with your wife several times. Can you give me specific dates of these discussions? I don't remember exact dates. Over several months. Several months. So more than 1 month but less than 12. I guess. You guess. Mr. Carter, you're asking this court to award you $600,000 based on your memory of discussions you can't specifically date. I remember the discussions happening. I just don't remember the exact dates. Where did these discussions take place? At home mostly. At home. In what room? Brandon hesitated. Kitchen, living room, bedroom. Different places. Different places. Can you describe one of these conversations? The content of what was said. I told Naomi my mom needed a house. Naomi said we should help her. She said, we should help her. Not, I will pay the mortgage. Help could mean many things, couldn't it? In context, it was clear she meant financially. Rebecca pulled out a printed text message. This is a message you sent to Simone Reed 8 months ago. Would you read the highlighted portion for the court? Brandon took the paper, his face paling as he read silently. Mr. Carter? Judge Rodriguez prompted. Naomi has over $600K saved. She's paranoid about protecting it. Never spends, just hoards, Brandon read quietly. And the next part? I know. I've tried getting her to invest in properties with me, but she always refuses. Says it's too risky. So 8 months ago you told your mistress that your wife refused to invest in properties with you. You characterized her as paranoid about protecting her savings. Does that sound like someone who agreed to pay a $600,000 mortgage? That was about different investments. Was it? Let's read Simone's response. Maybe there's another way. What if we make her think she has no choice? And your response? Like what? And Simone's answer, family emergency. Moral obligation. Something she can't say no to without looking like a terrible person. Does that refresh your memory, Mr. Carter? Brandon's jaw clenched. Those messages were private. They're also evidence of conspiracy to defraud. You and Simone explicitly discussed manipulating your wife into giving you money by creating a false family emergency. Isn't that exactly what you did? No. My mother genuinely needed a house. A house purchased at an inflated price by your mistress, using marital funds you took without permission, that you then expected your wife to pay for despite having no ownership stake in it. Is that what you call genuine need? Whitmore objected. Compound question. Sustained. Ms. Wilson, one question at a time. Rebecca approached the witness stand. Mr. Carter, you took $50,000 from your joint account to use as a down payment on your mother's house. Did you have your wife's permission? It was our money. That's not what I asked. Did you have her explicit permission to withdraw $50,000 for a house purchase she knew nothing about? I didn't think I needed permission. You didn't think you needed permission to withdraw $50,000 from a joint account? Mr. Carter, your bank requires both signatures for withdrawals over $10,000. How did you get the money? Brandon shifted uncomfortably. I made smaller withdrawals over time. You deliberately withdrew money in amounts small enough to avoid triggering the dual signature requirement. That's not forgetting to ask permission. That's intentionally hiding your actions. I planned to tell her. When? After you'd already spent it? Objection. Argumentative. I'll move on, Rebecca said. Mr. Carter, you formed an LLC with Simone Reed called SB Properties. Is that correct? Yes. When did you form this LLC? 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Shortly after your mother's house was purchased. What is the purpose of SB Properties? Real estate investment. Where did the starting capital come from? A business loan. A loan secured by your mother's house. The same house you claim you bought to help your struggling mother. You used it as collateral for a business venture with your mistress. How does that help your mother? The business will generate income that helps everyone. Will it? Because according to your business plan, which we subpoenaed, SB Properties intended to purchase rental properties and keep the profits. None of those profits were designated for paying your mother's mortgage. Were they? Brandon didn't answer. Mr. Carter, were any profits from SB Properties designated to help pay your mother's mortgage? Not specifically, but... Yes or no, please. No. So this business venture was designed to benefit you and Simone, using your mother's house as collateral while expecting your wife to pay the mortgage. Is that correct? It's more complicated than that. Is it? It seems quite simple to me. You and your mistress conspired to defraud your wife, using your mother as a pawn. You created false witnesses, filed a fraudulent lawsuit, and now you're committing perjury by claiming your wife agreed to something she never agreed to. Does that about sum it up? No. That's not what happened. Rebecca looked at Judge Rodriguez. No further questions, Your Honor. This witness has said quite enough. Brandon stepped down, his face red with anger and humiliation. As he passed our table, he glared at me. I met his eyes calmly. This was his doing. His lies. His fraud. I was just the person brave enough to call him on it. Judge Rodriguez checked the time. It's 4:30. We'll adjourn for today and resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Court is adjourned. As everyone filed out, Rebecca gathered our materials. That went well. Brandon contradicted himself multiple times, admitted to hiding financial transactions, and the text messages speak for themselves. Is it enough? I asked. It's enough to plant serious doubt about their claims. Tomorrow we present our case. We'll have Detective Mitchell testify, we'll have Grace Liu explain the pattern of fraud, and then you'll testify. By the time we're done, Judge Rodriguez will see this case for what it is, a scam. Outside the courthouse, Tessa was waiting. She'd taken the day off work to support me. How'd it go? She asked. Brandon lied on the stand. Rebecca destroyed him. Tomorrow's our turn. Good. I hope they regret ever messing with you. As we walked to the car, I felt lighter. The truth was coming out. Slowly, methodically, but undeniably. And Brandon's carefully constructed lies were crumbling under the weight of evidence. Tomorrow justice would be served. I could feel it. Rebecca opened our defense the next morning with Detective James Mitchell. He took the stand wearing a crisp gray suit, looking professional and credible. Detective Mitchell, please tell the court about your background, Rebecca began. I've been a private investigator for 15 years. Before that, I was a police detective for 12 years, specializing in fraud and financial crimes. I hold licenses in 3 states and have testified in over 200 cases. And I hired you to investigate this case. Can you explain what you found? Detective Mitchell opened his folder. I was asked to investigate Brandon Carter and Simone Reed. I conducted surveillance, reviewed financial records with appropriate legal authorization, and interviewed witnesses. What I found was a systematic pattern of fraud involving property value manipulation, marital asset dissipation, and conspiracy. He walked Judge Rodriguez through everything. The timeline of Brandon's cash withdrawals matching Simone's increased spending. The formation of SB Properties and the business loan secured by Patricia's house. The inflated property value. The text messages showing premeditation. In your professional opinion, was this house purchase legitimate? Rebecca asked. No. The price inflation, the deliberate exclusion of Naomi Carter from the property deed, the immediate use of the property as loan collateral, and the text messages discussing manipulation all indicate this was a planned fraud designed to access Naomi Carter's personal savings. On cross-examination, Whitmore tried to discredit him. "Detective Mitchell, isn't it true you're being paid by the defendant to find evidence against my clients?" "I'm being paid to investigate and document facts. I have no stake in the outcome of this case beyond providing accurate information." "But you're not an impartial investigator. You're being paid by one side." "Every expert witness is paid by the party that hires them, Mr. Whitmore. That doesn't change the facts I documented. The bank records, the text messages, the property assessments. Those are objective evidence, regardless of who paid me to find them." Whitmore had no effective response to that. Next, Rebecca called Grace Liu, the real estate agent who'd worked with Simone. Grace wore a bright blue blazer and looked nervous but determined. "Ms. Liu, how long have you worked in real estate?" 10 years. "I work at Premier Properties, the same firm where Simone Reed and Brandon Carter work. Can you tell the court about your observations regarding Simone Reed's business practices?" Grace took a breath. "Simone has a pattern of inflating property values. She targets buyers who are eager or desperate, who won't question her expertise. She manipulates appraisals, uses friendly inspectors who overlook issues, and coordinates with sellers who are willing to list properties above market value in exchange for quick sales. The extra money goes to Simone as undisclosed kickbacks or commissions." "How do you know this?" "I've seen the pattern. Properties she sells consistently appraise for less than purchase price when buyers try to refinance. Complaints get buried because Simone generates high commissions for the firm. I reported my concerns to management twice. Nothing was done." "Did you see this pattern with Patricia Carter's house purchase?" "Yes. When I saw the listing, I immediately knew something was wrong. The house sold for $480,000. I'd shown similar properties in that neighborhood for $300,000 to $340,000. The price made no sense unless it was another one of Simone's schemes." Whitmore's cross-examination was aggressive. "Ms. Liu, isn't it true you've been passed over for promotions that went to Ms. Reed?" "Yes, because Simone brought in higher commissions. Fraudulent commissions. Or perhaps you're simply jealous of a more successful colleague and you're using this trial to damage her reputation?" "I'm here because what Simone does is wrong. It hurts buyers, it hurts the industry, and it needs to stop." Rebecca then called a real estate appraiser who confirmed the house was overvalued by at least $150,000. Then a financial analyst who demonstrated the suspicious pattern of Brandon's cash withdrawals and Simone's spending. Each witness added another piece to the puzzle. By lunchtime, the picture was clear: systematic fraud. After lunch, Rebecca called me to the stand. I walked to the witness box on shaking legs, raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth. Nothing but the truth. Rebecca smiled encouragingly. "Naomi, please tell the court about your background." I took a breath. "I'm 34 years old. My parents died when I was 15, leaving me with nothing. I put myself through community college and then state university while working 3 jobs. I became a financial analyst. I've been saving money since I was 16 years old because I never wanted to be vulnerable again. Every dollar in my savings account represents years of sacrifice and hard work." "How much do you currently have in personal savings?" $614,000. "That's a significant amount. How did you save that much?" "By living below my means. By investing wisely. By never touching that money except to reinvest it. That money is my security, my future, my protection against the world." Rebecca nodded. "Can you tell the court about meeting Brandon?" "We met at a work conference 8 years ago. He was charming, funny, ambitious. We dated for a year and got married. At first, everything was wonderful. When did things change? Looking back, I think Brandon's interest in my money was always there, but I didn't see it. He'd make comments about my savings, suggest investments, question why I kept it separate. But the real change came about 8 months ago. He became distant. He started working late. He became obsessed with the idea that I should be spending my savings." "Did you ever discuss Patricia's housing situation before Brandon bought her the house?" "Yes. Patricia complained about rent increases and I sympathized. I suggested she look for a more affordable apartment or consider senior housing options. But I never, ever agreed to buy her a house or pay her mortgage." "Can you describe the evening Brandon showed you the mortgage documents?" I closed my eyes, remembering. He had takeout food waiting. He was being nice, which should have been my first warning. He slid the mortgage papers across the table and told me he'd bought his mother a house. Used $50,000 from our joint account without asking me. Then he said the mortgage was $3,200 a month and expected me to pay it from my personal savings. How did you respond? I was shocked. I asked why my name wasn't on the deed if I was supposed to pay. He said it was his mother's house. I told him I wouldn't pay for a house I didn't own. He called me selfish and left. Did you ever at any point verbally agree to pay this mortgage? No. Never. Not to Brandon, not to Patricia, not to anyone. What happened after you refused? The pressure campaign started. Patricia called constantly, guilt-tripping me. Brandon alternated between cold silence and verbal attacks. He stayed out late, came home smelling like perfume. When I asked about it, he deflected. Then I received the lawsuit papers at work. Rebecca walked me through the timeline, the text messages I'd discovered, the moment I realized Brandon was having an affair. How did it feel to discover your husband was planning to steal your life savings? Devastating. Not just the betrayal of the affair, but the calculated nature of it. He didn't fall in love with someone else and make a mistake. He planned this. He and Simone sat around discussing how to manipulate me, how to make me feel obligated, how to access my money. I was nothing but a target to them. Why didn't you just pay the mortgage to keep the peace? Because it would never stop. If I gave in once, they'd keep taking. And because I earned that money through years of hard work. No one has the right to take it from me through lies and manipulation. Rebecca's final question. Naomi, do you believe your husband and mother-in-law intentionally tried to defraud you? Yes. Without a doubt. This was planned, coordinated fraud. And I'm here to make sure they don't get away with it. Whitmore's cross-examination was exactly what Rebecca had predicted. He tried to paint me as cold and materialistic. Miss Carter, you have over $600,000 in savings, yet you refuse to help your mother-in-law with a $3,200 monthly mortgage payment. Don't you see how that appears selfish? I see how you want it to appear. But the facts are that I was asked to pay $600,000 over 30 years for a house I have no ownership of, that was purchased without my knowledge or consent, using marital funds taken without permission. That's not selfish. That's protecting myself from theft. Your marriage was struggling. Isn't it true you were more concerned with money than saving your relationship? My marriage was struggling because my husband was having an affair and planning to steal from me. Money wasn't the problem. His criminal behavior was. Miss Carter, at the family dinner Patricia mentioned, didn't you say you wanted to help? I may have expressed sympathy for Patricia's situation. But sympathy is not a legally binding contract to pay someone else's mortgage. So you admit you said you'd help? Help can mean many things. It doesn't automatically mean I'll write checks for $3,200 every month for 30 years. If you told me you needed help moving and I showed up to help carry boxes, would you then sue me claiming I promised to pay your moving costs? Of course not. Words need context. Whitmore tried several more angles, but I stayed calm, answering clearly and directly. Rebecca had prepared me well. After an hour, Whitmore finally said, "No further questions." I stepped down, feeling exhausted but strong. I told my truth. Now it was up to Judge Rodriguez to decide. Rebecca called 2 more witnesses. An ethics expert who testified about the professional violations Simone committed. And a banking expert who explained how Brandon had deliberately structured his withdrawals to avoid triggering joint signature requirements. By 3 p.m. Rebecca rested our case. Whitmore made a brief closing argument, still trying to paint this as a family dispute blown out of proportion. But his heart wasn't in it. The evidence was too damning. Rebecca's closing was powerful. Your Honor, this case is about a simple question. Do we allow people to steal money through fraud and manipulation, or do we hold them accountable? The plaintiffs filed a lawsuit claiming Naomi Carter owed them $600,000 based on a verbal agreement. But every witness who supposedly heard this agreement has either recanted their testimony or been proven to have committed perjury. The house purchase itself was fraudulent, with an inflated price handled by Brandon Carter's mistress. Text messages show premeditated conspiracy. Financial records show systematic asset dissipation. This isn't a family helping family. This is criminals targeting a victim who happened to be married to one of them. Naomi Carter worked her entire life to build financial security. She has every right to protect that money from theft. We ask that you dismiss this lawsuit entirely, award costs and attorney fees to the defendant, and refer this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Judge Rodriguez made notes throughout. When Rebecca sat down, the judge looked at both tables. I'm going to take this under advisement. I'll issue a written ruling within 2 weeks. However, I will note for the record that I have serious concerns about the credibility of the plaintiff's case. The documentary evidence presented by the defendant is substantial and troubling. Counsel should prepare for potential referrals to appropriate authorities. Court is adjourned. We stood as Judge Rodriguez left. Then Rebecca turned to me, smiling. We won. She hasn't ruled yet. Trust me. We won. Did you hear what she said? Serious concerns about credibility. Troubling evidence. Potential referrals to authorities. That's judicial speak for, the plaintiffs are liars and I'm probably going to report them for crimes. I wanted to feel relieved, but I was too numb. 7 years of marriage, ended in a courtroom. My husband exposed as a fraud. My future uncertain. Tessa met me in the hallway, pulling me into a hug. You were incredible in there. So strong. I don't feel strong. You are though. You stood up for yourself. You didn't back down. You're going to win and then you're going to move forward with your life. As we walked out of the courthouse, Brandon stood near the exit with Simone. He looked defeated, angry, trapped. Simone looked scared. I walked past them without a word. They'd stolen enough of my time, my energy, my peace. I wasn't giving them another second. In the car, driving back to Tessa's apartment, my phone rang. Rebecca. Naomi, you need to hear this. Whitmore just called me. They want to settle. Immediately. They'll dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice, pay your attorney fees, and Brandon will agree to an uncontested divorce with no claim on your separate property. What changed? They know they're going to lose. And they know Judge Rodriguez is probably going to refer them for criminal prosecution. They're trying to minimize damage. What about the fraud? The crimes they committed? A settlement in the civil case won't stop the judge from making a referral. But it might give them a chance to argue they've made amends, tried to make things right. What do you think I should do? Honestly, I think you should reject it. Make them face the full consequences of their actions. But that's a personal choice, not a legal one. I thought about it. About spending more time in court, more energy on Brandon, more of my life consumed by his betrayal. Reject it, I said firmly. No settlement. I want the judge's ruling. I want it on record what they did. And I want them prosecuted. Good, Rebecca said, satisfaction clear in her voice. That's what I was hoping you'd say. That night, lying on Tessa's couch for what I hoped would be the last time before I could move back to my own apartment, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor. A fighter. A woman who'd stared down fraud and manipulation and refused to be broken. Brandon had tried to reduce me to nothing more than a bank account. Instead, he'd proven I was so much more. I was strong, brave, unbreakable. And in 2 weeks, everyone would know it. The 2 weeks of waiting felt endless. I moved back into my apartment, which felt both familiar and strange. Brandon's things were still there. His clothes in the closet, his toiletries in the bathroom, his books on the shelf. Like he'd just stepped out and might return any moment. Tessa helped me pack everything into boxes. We didn't talk much. Just worked steadily, removing all traces of him from my life. Are you going to throw it away? Tessa asked, taping up the last box. I'm having it delivered to his mother's house. Let him deal with it. That feels poetic. On day 12 of waiting, Rebecca called. Judge Rodriguez wants both parties in court tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the ruling. That's earlier than expected. Judges move faster when they're angry. I think we're about to see exactly how angry Judge Rodriguez is. That night I barely slept. I kept running through scenarios in my mind. What if we lost? What if Judge Rodriguez somehow believed Brandon? What if I ended up owing $600,000 and having to declare bankruptcy? But another part of me, the stronger part, knew we'd won. The evidence was too clear. The fraud too obvious. Justice would prevail. I dressed carefully the next morning. A green blouse and black pants. Professional. Strong. Ready. At the courthouse, Brandon and Patricia sat at their table with Whitmore, all three looking tense. Simone wasn't in the gallery. Smart of her. This was going to be bad. Judge Rodriguez entered at 10 a.m. sharp. We all stood, then sat when directed. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence presented in this case, Judge Rodriguez began, her voice neutral. I've considered the arguments from both counsel. I've examined the documentary evidence extensively. And I'm prepared to issue my ruling. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. However, before I do, I have one question for Mr. Brandon Carter. Mr. Carter, please stand. Brandon stood slowly, Whitmore beside him. Mr. Carter, the property deed for 428 Maple Grove Avenue lists 2 owners. Your mother, Patricia Carter, and yourself. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. When you purchased this property, You paid $480,000. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And shortly after purchase, you secured a home equity line of credit for $150,000, using the property as collateral. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Where did the $150,000 go? Brandon hesitated. It went to my business. SB Properties, the LLC you formed with Simone Reed. Correct. Yes. So you purchased a house for your mother, then immediately borrowed $150,000 against it for your personal business venture, correct? It was an investment. Judge Rodriguez cut him off. That's not what I asked. Yes or no? Did you use your mother's house as collateral for your business? Yes. And while doing this, you were demanding that your wife pay the mortgage on this property, correct? She had agreed. Mr. Carter, I've heard all the testimony about this alleged agreement. What I want to know is this: how did you plan to pay the mortgage if your wife refused? The question hung in the air. Brandon's face went pale. I assumed she wouldn't refuse. You assumed. So you had no backup plan. You purchased a house your mother couldn't afford, immediately borrowed against it for your business, and simply assumed your wife would pay for it despite having no ownership stake in the property. Does that sum it up? Your Honor, I thought. I'm not interested in what you thought, Mr. Carter. I'm interested in what you did. You knowingly purchased an overpriced property, using marital funds without your wife's consent. You excluded her from the deed. You immediately leveraged the property for personal gain. You created false witnesses to support a fraudulent lawsuit when she refused to pay. And you had the audacity to come into my courtroom and lie under oath. Is there anything I've said that's factually incorrect? Brandon said nothing. Mr. Carter, I asked you a question. Have I stated anything factually incorrect? No, Your Honor. Good. Sit down. Brandon sat looking like he might be sick. Judge Rodriguez opened her written ruling. This court finds that no verbal contract existed between the plaintiff and defendant regarding mortgage payments for 428 Maple Grove Avenue. The testimony of the plaintiff's witnesses has been thoroughly discredited. Robert Green admitted to being financially compensated for his testimony. Diane Carter was proven to be in a different state during the time she claimed to witness discussions. Harold Price recanted his testimony entirely. The plaintiff's case rests solely on the uncorroborated testimony of Brandon and Patricia Carter, both of whom have been shown to be unreliable witnesses with significant financial motivations to lie. She continued reading, systematically dismantling every aspect of Brandon and Patricia's case. Furthermore, the court finds substantial evidence of fraud. The property purchase was conducted through Simone Reed, with whom Brandon Carter was engaged in an extramarital affair. The purchase price was inflated by approximately $160,000 above market value. Brandon Carter used marital funds without his wife's knowledge or consent. Text messages demonstrate premeditation and conspiracy to defraud. The immediate borrowing against the property for personal business use shows this was never about helping Patricia Carter but about enriching Brandon Carter and Simone Reed. Judge Rodriguez looked up from her papers directly at Brandon and Patricia. This is one of the most egregious cases of attempted fraud I've encountered in my 20 years on the bench. This lawsuit was not filed in good faith. It was filed as part of a coordinated scheme to steal $600,000 from Naomi Carter through manipulation, lies, and legal coercion. She paused, letting that sink in. Therefore, this court rules as follows. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. The plaintiff shall pay all court costs and attorney fees for the defendant, which I'm assessing at $47,000 based on the invoices submitted. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation into charges of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, and any other applicable charges. My breath caught. We'd won. Completely. But Judge Rodriguez wasn't done. Furthermore, I'm ordering an immediate investigation by the State Real Estate Commission into Simone Reed's practices and her firm's oversight. The pattern of fraud documented in this case suggests ongoing criminal enterprise. Mr. Whitmore, I suggest your clients obtain criminal defense attorneys immediately. And Mr. Carter, when you leave this courtroom, you should know that I will be providing the district attorney with every piece of evidence presented here, including those text messages demonstrating premeditation. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Brandon whispered. Mrs. Patricia Carter, you participated in this scheme. You provided false testimony. You enlisted false witnesses. You knowingly benefited from fraud. The fact that he's your son doesn't excuse your behavior. It makes it worse. You raised him to be a liar and a thief. Patricia was crying, but Judge Rodriguez showed no sympathy. Finally, Mrs. Naomi Carter, I want to commend you. You were targeted by the people closest to you. You were sued for your entire life savings. And you stood up for yourself. You fought back. You exposed the truth. This court system exists to protect people like you from people like them. I'm sorry you had to go through this, but I'm pleased you prevailed. You should be proud of your courage. I felt tears on my cheeks but didn't wipe them away. This court is adjourned. As Judge Rodriguez left, Rebecca grabbed my hand. You did it. You won everything. Behind us, I heard Patricia sobbing. Brandon was silent. Whitmore was packing his briefcase quickly, probably already planning his exit from this disaster of a case. Outside the courtroom, Detective Mitchell was waiting. I heard through the grapevine. Complete victory? Complete, Rebecca confirmed. The judge referred it for criminal prosecution. You should probably expect a call from the DA's office. They'll want your investigative files. Happy to provide them. Tessa burst through the courthouse doors, having waited in the gallery. You won. Oh my God, Naomi, you won. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I can't believe it's over, I said. It's not quite over, Rebecca cautioned. There will be criminal proceedings. You may have to testify again. And the divorce still needs to be finalized. But the hardest part is done. We stood on the courthouse steps, sunlight breaking through clouds. For the first time in months, I felt light. Free. Safe. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family. I showed it to Rebecca. She smiled grimly. Document it. That's harassment. We can add it to the pile. I blocked the number and put my phone away. They'd taken enough of my time. No more. Come on, Tessa said. I'm taking you to lunch. The most expensive lunch we can find. And you're paying because you just won $600,000 by not having to give it away. As we walked to the restaurant, leaving the courthouse behind, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not just hope that things would get better, but certainty. I'd been tested, challenged, attacked. And I'd won. Not because I was lucky, but because I was strong. Brandon had tried to break me. Instead, he'd proven I was unbreakable. And that was the sweetest victory of all. 6 months later, I stood in my new office looking out over the city. My financial consulting firm, Carter Analytics, occupied the entire 15th floor of a downtown building. Bright red accent walls complemented the modern furniture. The name Carter had been my maiden name, which I'd reclaimed as part of the divorce. I was taking it back, making it mine again. My phone rang. Rebecca Wilson. Naomi, I thought you'd want to know. Brandon's sentencing hearing is scheduled for next week. What are they expecting? 3 to 5 years for fraud and conspiracy. Simone got 4 years. Patricia got 2 years probation and community service because she cooperated with the prosecution. And the house. Being sold to cover restitution. Which, by the way, means you're getting $47,000 back for legal fees, plus the $50,000 Brandon stole from your joint account plus penalties and interest. Should be about $110,000 total. I smiled. Good. After hanging up, I walked through my office. 10 employees now, all financial analysts I'd personally trained. We specialized in helping people, especially women, protect their assets during divorce and navigate complex financial situations. Tessa had helped me design the business cards. They were a beautiful maroon color with gold lettering. Professional. Strong. Me. My assistant, Angela, knocked on the door. Your 2 p.m. is here. Jennifer Rhodes. Send her in. Jennifer was 35, wearing a worn green jacket, clutching a folder. She looked scared. Miss Carter, thank you for seeing me. I'm in a bad situation. Tell me about it. My husband wants me to sign over my inheritance to pay for his business debts. He says if I don't, I'm not supporting our marriage. But something feels wrong about it. I sat down across from her, remembering myself 6 months ago, confused and scared in Rebecca's office. Jennifer, let me tell you something. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And you never have to sign away your financial security to prove you love someone. We spent an hour going through her situation. Her husband's business was failing, but he'd been hiding the extent of the debt. He wanted her inheritance to cover his losses while keeping sole ownership of the business. It was financial manipulation, clear as day. Here's what we're going to do, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm going to call attorney Rebecca Wilson. She's the best. She'll help you protect your assets and, if necessary, get you out of this marriage safely. Jennifer started crying. I thought I was crazy. He kept saying I was being selfish, that good wives support their husbands. Good wives support their husbands. Good husbands don't steal from their wives. There's a difference. After Jennifer left with Rebecca's contact information and a comprehensive financial protection plan, I sat at my desk, looking at the framed newspaper article on the wall. Local woman defeats $600,000 fraud lawsuit. The local business journal had run the story after the trial, and it had sparked something. Women started reaching out, telling their own stories of financial manipulation and abuse. I realized I could help them the way Rebecca had helped me. My phone rang again. Detective Mitchell. Naomi just wanted to update you. The real estate commission stripped Simone's license. The firm she worked for is facing a class action lawsuit from buyers she defrauded. And get this, 3 other agents have come forward with evidence of similar schemes. The whole operation is crumbling. Good. How many people did she hurt? At least 20 buyers we've identified so far. Could be more. But because you stood up and fought, they all have a chance at justice now. After hanging up, I walked to the window again. The city sprawled below me, full of people living their lives. Some happy, some struggling, some fighting battles no one else could see. I'd been one of those people. Fighting a battle that seemed impossible, against enemies who should have been allies, for money I'd earned through years of hard work. But I'd won. Not just the lawsuit, but something bigger. I'd won my self-respect back. My sense of worth. My understanding that I deserved protection, safety, and justice. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. Dinner tonight? I made reservations at that new place downtown. 7 p.m. We're something fancy. I smiled. Tessa had been my rock through everything. She'd given me a place to stay, a shoulder to cry on, and the courage to keep fighting when I wanted to give up. That evening, I dressed in a beautiful royal blue dress, the same color as the blazer I'd worn to court. My hair was loose and natural. I looked like myself again. Not Brandon's wife. Not a victim. Just Naomi. Strong, independent, successful Naomi. The restaurant was elegant but comfortable. Tessa was already there, wearing a stunning green dress, grinning when she saw me. Look at you, she said. CO vibes. I learned from the best, I replied, sitting down. Thank you, Tessa. For everything. I literally couldn't have gotten through this without you. That's what best friends are for. Speaking of which. She pulled out a small wrapped box. Congratulations present. Inside was a silver bracelet engraved with words, unbreakable. Always. It's perfect, I whispered, slipping it on my wrist. Over dinner we talked about the business, about Tessa's nursing career, about life. Not about Brandon. Not about the trial. That chapter was closed. Have you thought about dating again? Tessa asked over dessert. Eventually. Maybe. But right now I'm focused on the business. On helping other women. On building something that matters. You've already built something that matters. You built yourself back up from nothing. I squeezed her hand. We built myself back up. You, me, Rebecca, Detective Mitchell. I had help. Everyone needs help sometimes. That's not weakness. That's human. After dinner, I drove home to my apartment. My apartment. Not Brandon's. Just mine. I'd redecorated completely. Bright colors everywhere. Blue pillows, red curtains, green accents. No more neutral tones. I wanted color, life, energy. On my coffee table sat a stack of thank you notes from clients I'd helped. Women who'd been in situations similar to mine. Women who'd found the courage to fight back because I'd shown them it was possible. That's what mattered. Not the money I'd saved, though that was important. Not the victory in court, though that was satisfying. What mattered was that I'd turned my pain into purpose. I opened my laptop and checked emails. 3 new client inquiries. A request for a speaking engagement at a women's business conference. An invitation to consult on a documentary about financial abuse. My life had become bigger than I'd ever imagined. More meaningful. More full. A year ago, I'd been sitting at a dinner table, staring at mortgage documents I never agreed to, feeling trapped and helpless. Now I was running my own business, helping other women, and living on my own terms. The doorbell rang, surprising me. I checked the peephole. Detective Mitchell stood there, looking apologetic. Sorry to drop by unannounced, he said when I opened the door. But I wanted to give you this in person. He handed me an official-looking document. A check from the state of California. Restitution payment. $110,000, just like Rebecca had predicted. They expedited it because of the high-profile nature of the case, Detective Mitchell explained. Thought you'd want to know your money is back. I stared at the check. Not the full $600,000 they tried to steal, but the money they'd actually taken. Plus damages. Plus legal fees. Thank you, I said. For everything you did. Just doing my job. But Naomi, what you did. Standing up like that? That took real courage. I've seen a lot of people give up when family turns on them. You didn't. You fought. And because you fought, other people are getting justice too. After he left, I sat on my couch holding the check. Tomorrow I'd deposit it back into my savings. The savings I'd protected. The future I'd fought for. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Patricia. I know you probably won't read this. But I'm sorry. I was wrong. I chose my son over what was right. I'm paying for it now. I hope someday you can forgive me. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond with anger, to remind her of all the pain she'd caused. But another part, the part that was healing, didn't see the point. I typed back, I hope you find peace, Patricia. Truly. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Take care of yourself. I sent it, then blocked her number. Not out of hate, but out of self-preservation. I didn't need her apologies. I needed my peace. That night, I stood on my balcony looking at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Brandon was probably packing for prison. Simone was probably already serving her sentence. Their lives had imploded because of their own choices. But my life was just beginning. I'd learned something through this nightmare. Strength isn't about never being hurt. It's about getting back up after you've been knocked down. It's about fighting when fighting seems impossible. It's about refusing to let other people's cruelty define your worth. Brandon had tried to reduce me to nothing but a bank account. Instead, he'd helped me discover I was so much more. I was resilient. I was brave. I was capable of surviving anything. And more than that, I was free. Free from a marriage built on lies. Free from people who saw me as a resource to exploit. Free to build the life I'd always wanted. I thought about the girl I'd been at 15, orphaned and alone, wondering how she'd survive. If I could go back and tell her what was coming, what would I say? I'd tell her that she'd face heartbreak and betrayal. That someone she loved would try to destroy her. That she'd have to fight the hardest battle of her life. But I'd also tell her that she'd win. That she'd build something beautiful from the ashes. That she'd help other women find their strength. That she'd discover she was unbreakable. Looking at my reflection in the balcony window, wearing that blue dress with Tessa's bracelet glinting on my wrist, I saw someone I was proud to be. Not Brandon's wife. Not a victim. Not someone to be pitted or manipulated or used. Just Naomi. Strong, independent, successful, happy Naomi. And that was the sweetest victory of all.